Blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but for the Lawson family, aesthetics mattered more than a pulse. When a devastating accident left a young woman severely scarred, her own sister banned her from the wedding. So, she did what anyone pushed to the brink would do. She canceled the venue. Amelia Lawson had not asked to be a tragedy, nor had she ever sought the pitying glances of strangers in the grocery store. 3 years ago, her life was neatly derailed on Interstate 95, just outside of Baltimore. A distracted driver in a Ford F-150 had crossed the median, T-boning her modest sedan and sparking an engine fire that trapped her inside for 11 agonizing minutes. By the time the paramedics pulled her free, third-degree burns had ravaged the right side of her face, extending down her neck and across her collarbone. After multiple skin grafts at the Johns Hopkins Burn Center and grueling physical therapy, Amelia survived. But she wore her survival visibly. The thick, pale, keloid scars mapping her jawline and neck were impossible to hide, a permanent testament to the flames. While she painstakingly rebuilt her confidence, her family, specifically her mother, Brenda, and her younger sister, Brittany, struggled to look her in the eye. Brittany Lawson was everything Amelia was not: curated, flawless, and deeply obsessed with the superficial. Where Amelia was an introverted landscape architect, Brittany was an aspiring lifestyle influencer whose entire existence was filtered through the lens of a perfectly tailored Instagram grid. So, when Brittany announced her engagement to Preston Kensington, the heir to a lucrative Chicago real estate empire, the Lawson household went into an absolute frenzy. The Kensingtons were old money, and Brenda and Brittany were determined to prove they belonged in that elite stratosphere. There was only one problem. Weddings designed to impress the Kensington family cost a fortune, and the Lawsons were strictly middle class. That was when Brittany's eyes landed on Amelia. More specifically, they landed on Amelia's most prized possession. 2 years prior, their eccentric Aunt Margot had passed away from pancreatic cancer. While the rest of the family had found Margot difficult and rarely visited, Amelia had spent every weekend driving up to care for her, reading to her, and managing her medications. In a final act of gratitude, Margot bypassed Brenda and Brittany entirely, leaving her sprawling, multi-million-dollar property a breathtaking estate on the shores of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, known locally as the Willows, solely to Amelia. The estate featured sweeping manicured lawns, a century-old oak grove, and an unobstructed view of the shimmering water. It was an absolute dream venue, one that would easily rent for $25,000 a weekend. "Please, Millie." Brittany had begged over a forced brunch at a high-end bistro, her manicured hands clasping her sister's. "Preston's parents want us to book the Ritz, but I want something unique, something exclusive. The Willows would be perfect. I'll handle all the permits, the vendors, everything. I just need the space." Amelia hesitated. The relationship between the sisters had been strained since the accident. Brittany rarely visited the hospital, later claiming the smell of antiseptics made her nauseous. Yet, sitting across from her beaming sister, Amelia felt a desperate pang of longing for the bond they used to share as children. She wanted to be a good sister. She wanted to heal the rift. "Okay," Amelia had said softly, ignoring the tight, pulling sensation of the scars on her neck as she smiled. "You can have your wedding at the Lakehouse, my gift to you." For 6 months, Amelia's quiet sanctuary was overrun. Brittany hired Lumiere Events, a high-end Chicago wedding planning agency, and the peaceful weekends at the lake were replaced by a parade of aggressive caterers, florists mapping out massive floral arches, and lighting technicians drilling string lights into Aunt Margot's precious oaks. Amelia endured it all with silent grace. She moved her own belongings into the attic to give Brittany's bridal party full run of the main bedrooms. She even spent her own money repairing the vintage boathouse so it would look perfect in the background of the photographs. But as the wedding date loomed closer, the atmosphere shifted. It started with the dress shopping. Amelia, operating under the assumption that she would be a bridesmaid, asked when they were going to Kleinfeld's or a local boutique. Brittany nervously laughed it off, claiming she was just doing mismatched dresses and that Amelia could wear whatever she felt comfortable in. Then came the bridal shower at the Kensington Country Club. Amelia was invited, but when it came time for group photos, Brittany's maid of honor, a perfectly tanned heiress named Morgan, smoothly maneuvered Amelia to the very edge of the frame, ensuring she was completely cropped out of every picture posted online. Amelia tried to brush it off as paranoia. She told herself she was overthinking. She spent her days aggressively weeding the Lakehouse gardens, ensuring the property was a lush, vibrant green for her sister's perfect day. She wanted Brittany to be proud of her. She wanted to belong. The wedding was exactly 5 days away. The massive peaked white tents from Elite Tent Rentals were already erected on the south lawn, their pristine canvas flapping gently in the breeze, coming off Lake Geneva. Crystal chandeliers were being hoisted into the rafters, and the air smelled of freshly cut grass and expensive linen. Amelia was in the kitchen, wiping down the marble countertops for the fourth time, trying to stay out of the way of the frantic wedding planners. Her phone buzzed on the island. It was an email notification. She glanced at the screen. The sender was a woman named Madison, the lead photographer from Golden Hour Clicks, a wildly expensive photography vendor Brittany had flown in from Los Angeles. Subject: Final shot list and logistics. Lawson, Kensington Wedding to Brittany Lawson, CC, Morgan Vanderwall, Amelia Lawson, property contact. Amelia clicked it open, assuming it was a logistical question about parking or electrical outlets. Instead, she found a massive PDF attachment detailing every single moment of the wedding day, color-coded by the minute. Out of morbid curiosity, Amelia scrolled to the family portraits section. Her blood ran ice-cold. There, in bold red letters, was a section titled Client-Specific Requests, Avoidances. Underneath, bulleted with clinical precision, were 3 points. Ensure Preston's mother is photographed strictly from her left side. No photos of the catering staff during service. Do not photograph the bride's sister, Amelia. Client has requested she not be in any formal or candid shots due to facial disfigurement. Keep her out of the background of the ceremony. Amelia stopped breathing. The words blurred as a sudden, violent wave of nausea hit her. Facial disfigurement. It was a medical term, sure, but seeing it weaponized by her own sister to exclude her from family memories felt like a physical blow. Her hands shook as she scrolled further down the email chain, looking at the previous replies that Madison had forgotten to delete when adding Amelia to the CC line. From Brittany Lawson, hi Madison. Yes, the shot list looks great. One last thing. My sister Amelia is the one managing the property. She lives there. She was in a bad car fire a few years ago, and her scars are very prominent. Preston's family is quite conservative and traditional, and honestly, the scars clash with the aesthetic of the day. It's too jarring. I've already told her she isn't in the bridal party, but I need you to make sure she doesn't end up in any of the background shots. We are going to ask her to stay inside the house during the actual vows so she doesn't distract the guests. Amelia dropped the phone. It clattered loudly against the marble. She wasn't a bridesmaid. She wasn't a guest. She was a ghost. A monster to be hidden away in the basement while high society drank champagne on the lawns she had painstakingly manicured with her own scarred hands. Before the tears could fall, the front door burst open. Brittany strutted in, flanked by their mother, Brenda. They were laughing about a seating chart dispute, holding massive iced lattes. Amelia! Brenda called out, kicking off her designer shoes. The caterers need to know if the Sub-Zero fridge in the garage is cleared out yet. They have 300 pounds of ice coming. Amelia slowly picked up her phone. She walked out of the kitchen and into the grand foyer, her posture rigidly straight. Brittany, Amelia said, her voice eerily calm. I just got an email from Madison, your photographer. Brittany froze, her straw halfway to her mouth. The color drained from her perfectly bronzed face. Madison? Why would she email you? She copied me on the logistics for the property, Amelia replied. Stepping closer, she held up the screen. And she left the previous emails in the chain. The ones where you told her my face clashes with your aesthetic. The ones where you said I'm a distraction and need to be hidden indoors during the ceremony. Silence suffocated the room. Only the distant sound of workers drilling outside broke the tension. Millie, Brittany stammered, exchanging a panicked look with Brenda. It's not what it sounds like. It was just a miscommunication with the photographer. You called me a facial disfigurement, Brittany. Amelia's voice finally cracked, the raw betrayal bleeding through her composed facade. You are using my home, my sanctuary, the house I gave you for free. And you were going to lock me inside so Preston's snobby parents wouldn't have to look at the burn victim? Brenda stepped forward, her expression hardening into the patronizing scowl she always used when she wanted to shut Amelia down. Amelia, calm down. You are being dramatic. You know how stressful this wedding is for your sister. Dramatic? Amelia echoed, staring at her mother in disbelief. Yes, dramatic, Brenda snapped, adjusting her silk scarf. Look, honey, be reasonable. You have to admit, the scars are severe. Preston's family is flying in senators and CEOs. Brittany just wants everything to look perfect. You can't blame her for wanting beautiful photos without a distraction in the background. It's her special day. You should be happy for her, not making this about yourself. Amelia stared at the two women standing in her foyer. For 3 years, she had felt like a burden. She had apologized for making people uncomfortable. She had worn turtlenecks in July and looked down at the pavement when she walked. She had absorbed their disgust and internalized it, believing she was somehow less worthy of love or inclusion because someone else had crashed a truck into her car. But looking at Brittany's embarrassed, unapologetic face and her mother's cold, calculating eyes, something inside Amelia snapped. The deep, heavy well of sorrow she had been drowning in evaporated, replaced instantly by a blinding, incandescent rage. You're right, Amelia said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet whisper. Brenda sighed in relief. Thank you, darling. I knew you'd understand. It is her special day, Amelia interrupted, her eyes locking onto Brittany. And you have absolute control over who is at your wedding. You don't want me there? Fine. I won't be there. Brittany forced a tight smile. Thank you, Millie. I promise I'll bring you a slice of cake after. But since I'm not a guest, Amelia continued, taking a step toward the heavy oak front door and pulling it open, and since I am just a distraction, hiding a disfigurement, I'm afraid I cannot allow strangers to host private events on my property. Brittany's smile vanished. What? This is my house, Brittany. Aunt Margot left it to me. There is no contract. There is no rental agreement. You are legally a guest here, and I am revoking your invitation. Amelia pointed a trembling finger out the door, toward the massive white tents and the sparkling lake. I want you, your wedding planners, your caterers, and your awful tents off my property. Brenda let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Amelia, stop this nonsense immediately. The wedding is in 5 days. Everything is paid for. The invitations are out. Then you better start calling people, Mom, Amelia said, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. Because if there is a single wedding-related item on my property in 48 hours, I am calling the local sheriff to report a mass trespassing. You wouldn't dare! Brittany shrieked, dropping her latte. It shattered against the hardwood floor, dark coffee splashing onto the expensive rug. You can't ruin my life over a stupid picture. Preston's parents will humiliate me. We'll lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're right. I'm just a distraction, Amelia said coldly, stepping aside and gesturing to the driveway. Get out. For a long, agonizing minute, neither Brittany nor Brenda moved. They stood frozen in the grand foyer of the Willows, the shattered iced latte seeping into the antique Persian rug, their expressions morphing from arrogant disbelief to genuine panic. Brittany let out a shrill, breathless laugh, the kind of sound a person makes when their brain refuses to process a catastrophic reality. Millie, stop! Brittany finally gasped, wiping a rogue drop of coffee from her designer ankle boot. This isn't funny. You are having an emotional overreaction. Just calm down, and let's talk about this like adults. I am completely calm, Amelia replied, and to her own surprise, it was the absolute truth. The heavy, suffocating anxiety that had plagued her for the past 3 years, the constant fear of being judged, the desperate need for her family's validation had vanished. In its place was a cold, impenetrable armor. I have never been more clear-headed in my entire life. You have 48 hours to clear this property. Every tent, every folding chair, every single imported peony. Get it out. Brenda's maternal mask violently slipped, revealing the ruthless social climber beneath. She marched across the foyer, stopping mere inches from Amelia, her face flushed with unadulterated fury. Listen to me, you ungrateful little brat. I have invested thousands of dollars into this weekend. The Kensingtons are expecting a lakeside estate. If you pull this stunt, you will humiliate this family permanently. I will never forgive you. I will cut you off completely. Amelia did not flinch. She looked down at her mother, feeling a profound sense of pity. You cut me off the day of the accident, Mom, You just didn't have the courage to say it out loud. Now, please pack your bags. When Brittany realized that Amelia was not bluffing, that the quiet, compliant sister she had bullied for years was holding her ground, she absolutely lost her mind. She dropped to her knees, weeping hysterically, begging and negotiating. She promised Amelia could sit in the front row. She promised Amelia could be in every single photograph. She even frantically offered to pay Amelia a rental fee for the weekend, but the apologies were hollow, driven entirely by the terror of losing her high society wedding, rather than any genuine remorse for the cruelty she had inflicted. Amelia simply turned her back, walked into her father's old study, and locked the heavy mahogany door. 10 minutes later, the frantic pounding on the study door began, accompanied by the panicked voice of Penelope, the lead coordinator from Lumiere Events. Brittany had immediately called her in a state of hyperventilation. "Amelia? Miss Lawson? This is Penelope. Please, open the door," the coordinator pleaded, her usually composed voice trembling with the realization that a $250,000 event was collapsing in real time. "We have vendor contracts. We have union workers setting up the staging. You cannot legally shut down a production of this scale without facing massive liability." Amelia leaned against her desk, picked up her cell phone, and dialed the local non-emergency dispatch. Within 20 minutes, a familiar white and green cruiser pulled down the long gravel driveway. Sheriff Donovan Hayes, a stern, no-nonsense man who had known Aunt Margot for decades, stepped out onto the property. He had always been kind to Amelia, often bringing her fresh corn from his farm during her grueling recovery months. Amelia met him on the front porch, handing him a copy of the property deed and explaining the situation with quiet dignity. Donovan listened, his jaw tightening as he glanced at the hysterical bride crying on the lawn and the massive catering trucks idling by the garage. "They don't have a lease?" Donovan asked, his hand resting on his utility belt. "No, sir, it was a verbal favor, one that I am officially retracting," Amelia stated. Donovan nodded slowly. He walked down the porch steps and approached Penelope and Brenda, who were frantically waving clipboards. "Ladies," his booming voice cut through the chaos, "the property owner has formally revoked her permission for this event. You are currently trespassing. I suggest you start calling your crews and packing up immediately, or I will have to start issuing citations and towing vehicles." What followed was a spectacle of humiliating proportions. The dismantling of Brittany Lawson's dream wedding was not a quiet affair. It was a loud, aggressive, and highly visible disaster. Neighbors from adjoining lakefront properties wandered out onto their docks with binoculars, watching in absolute fascination as the pristine white canvas of the elite tent rentals pavilions collapsed to the ground like deflated parachutes. Union workers, furious about the sudden cancellation and demanding overtime pay, aggressively yanked thousands of dollars worth of imported fairy lights from the ancient oak branches. Floral delivery vans backed out of the driveway, taking their elaborate, cascading arrangements of white orchids and baby's breath with them. Penelope paced back and forth on the lawn, screaming furiously into her cell phone as she tried to negotiate refunds that were explicitly denied by her non-refundable vendor contracts. By sunset, the sprawling south lawn of the Willows, which had been transformed into a breathtaking venue just hours prior, was reduced to trampled grass and muddy tire tracks. Brittany and Brenda were the last to leave. They stood by Brenda's luxury SUV, their designer luggage hastily shoved into the trunk. Brittany's face was swollen, her perfect makeup ruined by hours of relentless sobbing. The influencer aesthetic was entirely gone, replaced by the terrified reality of a woman who had to explain to her obscenely wealthy fiancé why their venue had vanished 4 days before they were supposed to say their vows. Brenda gripped the driver's side door, shooting one final, venomous glare toward the porch where Amelia stood. "You are dead to us," Brenda hissed, her voice dripping with pure malice. "You will die alone in this house, Amelia. You have ruined your sister's life out of pure jealousy." Amelia did not shout back. She did not cry. She simply watched the SUV speed down the gravel driveway, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled quietly over the empty lawn. As the taillights disappeared onto the main road, the heavy silence of the Lakehouse returned. Amelia took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling her lungs. For the first time since the accident, she felt entirely, unequivocally free. The next 96 hours in the Lost in Kensington universe were a masterclass in absolute pandemonium. Back in Chicago, Brittany and Brenda were trapped in a logistical nightmare of epic proportions. With 4 days until the ceremony, finding a venue capable of hosting 300 elite guests was mathematically impossible. Every country club, high-end hotel, and historical estate was booked years in advance. Desperation breeds compromise. Ultimately, Penelope managed to secure the only available space large enough to hold the guest list, a bleak, aggressively carpeted convention hall at a mid-tier airport hotel near O'Hare. The room smelled faintly of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner, featuring drop ceilings and fluorescent lighting that no amount of draped chiffon could disguise. It was a spectacular fall from grace for a bride who had spent 2 years bragging online about her exclusive, private estate lakeside nuptials. But the venue downgrade was only the beginning of Brittany's unraveling. The Kensington family, specifically Preston and his formidable parents, Harrison and Eleanor, were demanding answers. Preston was a passive, easily manipulated man who mostly nodded along with whatever Brittany said. But his mother, Eleanor Kensington, was a different breed entirely. Eleanor was a razor-sharp matriarch who managed the Kensington family's extensive philanthropic foundation. She possessed an uncanny ability to smell a lie from a mile away. When Brittany tearfully claimed that the Lakehouse had suffered a catastrophic plumbing failure and a sudden mold infestation, Eleanor's suspicions were immediately aroused. She knew Amelia lived there full-time, and she knew the estate was meticulously maintained. The truth, as it always does, found its way to the surface. It did not come from Amelia. It came from the collateral damage of Brittany's own vanity. Madison, the Los Angeles-based photographer from Golden Hour Clicks, was furious. The sudden venue change meant she was now forced to shoot a high-profile society wedding in a windowless airport convention center, entirely destroying the natural light portfolio piece she had been promised. Furthermore, Brittany had tried to blame Madison for the cancellation, aggressively texting her and accusing her of ruining the wedding by sending the email to Amelia. Brittany even threatened to withhold the final payment and leave devastating reviews online. Madison, an industry veteran who did not tolerate bullying from spoiled brides, decided to protect herself. She forwarded the entire unedited email chain directly to Penelope, the wedding planner, as proof that the venue loss was strictly the client's fault. Penelope, whose reputation was hanging by a thread with the Kensington family, immediately passed the email chain to Eleanor Kensington to absolve her agency of any blame. On Thursday evening, just 48 hours before the rehearsal dinner, Eleanor summoned Brittany and Preston to the Kensington penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. Brittany arrived wearing her finest cashmere, ready to play the victim of unfortunate circumstances. She was entirely unprepared for the sight of Eleanor sitting rigidly in a leather armchair, a printed stack of emails resting on the glass coffee table before her. "Sit down, Brittany," Eleanor commanded, her voice dropping the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. Preston stood silently behind his mother's chair, looking pale and deeply uncomfortable. Brittany tentatively sat on the edge of the sofa. "Eleanor, thank you for seeing us. I know this venue change is stressful, but I promise Penelope is transforming the ballroom." "I don't care about the ballroom," Eleanor interrupted, picking up the stack of papers. "I care about the fact that you lied to my face. I care about the fact that you evicted your own sister from your wedding because you believe her scars clash with your aesthetic." Brittany's heart stopped. The blood rushed from her head, leaving her dizzy and nauseous. I don't know what you're talking about." Eleanor tossed the emails onto the table. "Do not insult my intelligence. I have the direct correspondence between you and the photographer. You called your sister a facial disfigurement. You planned to lock her indoors to hide her from our guests." Tears sprang to Brittany's eyes, her default defense mechanism. "Eleanor, please, you have to understand. Preston's family is so important, and Amelia's scars are so jarring. I just wanted everything to be perfect for your friends." Eleanor stood up, her posture imperious and terrifying. "My brother, Preston's uncle, died in an industrial fire 30 years ago," she said, her voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "He lived his final 5 years covered in third-degree burns. He was the kindest, bravest man I ever knew. The fact that you would weaponize a tragedy to protect your shallow, pathetic social media image disgusts me to my absolute core." Brittany choked on a sob, looking desperately at Preston, Preston, please, tell her. I did it for us. Preston finally spoke, his voice hollow. I can't marry you, Brittany, if you can treat your own flesh and blood like this. I don't even want to know what you'd do to me if I became an inconvenience. The hammer fell. The engagement was unequivocally broken. The Kensingtons did not just cancel the wedding, they orchestrated a strategic, brutal social exile. Eleanor's assistant contacted every single guest on the Kensington side, informing them that the wedding was cancelled due to irreconcilable moral differences. When pressed for details by high society gossips, Eleanor made sure the truth about the emails was leaked to exactly the right people. Within a week, Brittany was a social pariah in Chicago. Her carefully curated influencer brand imploded overnight as former friends and sponsors distanced themselves from the scandal. Brenda, humiliated and ousted from the elite country club circles she had sacrificed so much to infiltrate, was forced to sell her luxury SUV to cover the massive, non-refundable debts from the cancelled catering and vendor contracts. Meanwhile, 2 hours north, the shores of Lake Geneva remained blissfully quiet. Amelia stood on the back porch of the Willows, holding a steaming mug of black tea. The morning mist was gently rolling off the surface of the water, and the ancient oak trees swayed peacefully in the breeze. The scars on her neck and jaw pulled slightly as she smiled, but for the first time, she didn't instinctively reach up to cover them. They were not a disfigurement. They were the physical proof that she had survived the fire, and more importantly, they were the catalyst that had finally set her free from the toxic ashes of her family. She took a slow sip of her tea, listening to the quiet rustle of the leaves, knowing that her sanctuary was finally, entirely her own. Family is supposed to protect you, not hide you away in the shadows. Amelia's incredible story proves that standing up for your own dignity is the most beautiful thing you can do. What would you have done if you were in Amelia's shoes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of ultimate karma, please hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more intense real-life drama.